It started with just one day. One seemingly harmless decision. I told myself, you deserve a break. And that break turned into a habit. That habit turned into a pattern. And within a week, my life wasn't just off track, it was spiraling. They say good habits build a life. Bad ones? They burn it down quietly. And in just 7 days, I tested that theory. The first habit? Avoid everything uncomfortable. Feel something unpleasant? Scroll. Face a difficult task? Procrastinate. Disagree with someone? Stay silent or explode. Discomfort became the enemy, instead of the signal. I made comfort my god, and in return, it made me soft, reactive, and anxious. Nothing grew. Not my skills, not my discipline, not my courage. Just my excuses. Then came the second. Complain instead of reflect. I didn't analyze my role in anything. Everything was someone else's fault. The weather, the system, the people around me. I complained like it was a full-time job. And it paid me in bitterness, resentment, and a total loss of control over my own life. You can't grow when your energy is pointed outward at everything but yourself. But I didn't want growth. I wanted validation. And misery loves to echo itself in complaint. Third, say yes to everything that feels good now. Sleep in, skip the workout, eat junk, binge content. Instant gratification was my currency. But what I didn't realize is every time I chose the now pleasure, I was taking a loan from my future self. One I couldn't afford to keep taking. And let me tell you, debt to your future isn't visible on a bank statement. It shows up as regret, insecurity, and stagnation. Fourth, ignore the voice. You know the one. The quiet whisper that tells you, this isn't right. This isn't who you're meant to be. That voice was inconvenient. So I drowned it out with noise music, screens, distractions. Anything to avoid sitting with myself. I became a stranger to my own intuition. And once you stop listening to that voice, you start living someone else's life. Or worse, no life at all. Just existence. And finally, the fifth habit. Lie to yourself. Pretend everything's fine. Tell yourself you'll change next week. Minimize the damage. Exaggerate your intentions. I became my own illusionist. Hiding behind productivity quotes I didn't live by. Talking about goals I didn't act on. Projecting a version of myself I was too lazy to build. Lying to yourself is the most dangerous form of betrayal. Because once you stop trusting you, everything else collapses. In 7 days, I watched my momentum evaporate. My mood decline. My self-respect dim like a dying light bulb. And it all happened because I stopped doing the small, hard things. That no one applauds but that build a life. I rejected discomfort, rejected ownership, rejected patience, rejected intuition, and rejected honesty. And I got exactly what I asked for, a version of me I didn't even want to be around. This isn't a cry for help. It's a warning. To you. To anyone who thinks they're too strong to fall off track. It happens fast. One habit at a time. And the worst part? You don't even notice the fall until you hit the bottom. But there's good news in this too. If a few small habits can ruin your life in a week, then a few intentional ones can rebuild it. That's not just motivation, that's math. But first, you have to stop running. Stop blaming. Stop lying. And start listening. Because the habits that ruin you don't look dangerous. They look convenient, comfortable, common. That's what makes them deadly. But let me ask you this. What habits are you choosing right now? What are you trading your future for? If you're still watching this, then maybe, just maybe, you already know the answer. And maybe this isn't the end. Maybe this is the start. But instead of changing, I doubled down. Because change meant effort. Change meant sacrifice. And I had grown addicted to the path of least resistance. I started waking up later. Not because I needed the rest, but because I didn't want to face the day. I scrolled for dopamine hits, fed my mind with noise. I avoided silence because in the silence, I'd hear the truth. And truth is inconvenient when you're lying to yourself. I stopped showing up. To workouts, to commitments, to people, but most of all to myself. And every time I broke a promise to me, a piece of me quietly died. Not with a scream, but a sigh. The sigh that says, "Here we go again." The sigh that knows better, but settles for worse. I blamed burnout. But it wasn't burnout. It was rot. The kind that sets in when you ignore your conscience long enough. When you ignore your values long enough. And then you wake up one day, and you don't even recognize the person in the mirror. Not because of how they look, but because of how they feel. Empty, bitter, tired. Not tired from effort, tired from avoidance. That's the worst kind of fatigue. The kind that comes not from doing too much, but from doing too little of what actually matters. And then came the comparison. Scrolling through lives I wasn't living. Watching people chase what I was too scared to start. I told myself they had advantages I didn't. But deep down, I knew. They just had discipline I lacked. And discipline isn't some mysterious trait. It's a decision. Repeated daily. In silence. Without praise. Without likes. Without applause. I chose the opposite. Comfort. Distraction. Emotional indulgence. And that choice had a cost. I lost clarity. I lost purpose. I lost momentum. And when you lose those three things, it's not long before you lose yourself. But the irony, even in all this mess, a part of me still hoped someone would save me. Someone would notice. Reach out. Say, "Hey, you okay?" But no one came. Because I never told the truth. Because I wore the mask too well. And masks get lonely. So if you're here, wearing that mask, scrolling through videos, looking for the one piece of content that might finally shake you awake, let this be it. Let this be the mirror. The uncomfortable one. The one that doesn't flatter, but exposes. You don't need a new app. You don't need another self-help book. You don't need more motivation. You just need to stop pretending. Because pretending is the habit that ruins everything. Pretending to be fine. Pretending you'll start tomorrow. Pretending the little decisions don't matter. But they do. They're the only ones that matter. Because your life isn't built in a day. It's built in hundreds of invisible choices that either create you or erase you. You get to pick. And right now, in this very moment, you're picking, whether you like it or not. And every night, I told myself the same lie. Tomorrow, I'll fix it. But tomorrow came, and nothing changed. Because the lie wasn't about time. It was about will. And willpower doesn't arrive by accident. It's summoned by choice. But I wasn't choosing. I was coasting. I became reactive. Every little thing felt overwhelming. Late emails, unexpected tasks, uncomfortable conversations. Things I used to handle with calm now felt like personal attacks. That's what happens when your inner world is chaotic. Even peace feels threatening. Because it reminds you of the control you surrendered. I began avoiding eye contact with myself. No mirrors. No deep thoughts. No long walks without my phone. Stillness became terrifying. Because in stillness, I'd have to confront everything I'd buried. The laziness, the envy, the weakness, the shame. So I kept busy. Not productive, just occupied. Noise. Screens. Meaningless tasks. Anything to avoid the truth. And yet, even in my avoidance, even in the decay, there was still this faint, persistent ache. A whisper I couldn't kill. It said, "This isn't who you are." I hated it. because it reminded me that I knew better. And when you know better, you don't get to play the victim forever. That's the curse of self-awareness. You can't suffer in peace. You always know your suffering is self-inflicted. And that knowledge? It's heavy. I started resenting people who were doing the work. Not because they were arrogant, but because they were proof it was possible. They shattered my excuses. Their discipline made my chaos look chosen. Because it was. I chose this. Maybe not all at once, but one small compromise at a time. Skip the journal. Skip the workout. Skip the gratitude. Skip the apology. Skip the effort. Each time, I traded something sacred for something easy. And the scariest part? Nobody stopped me. No alarm goes off when your soul starts eroding. There's no warning sign for becoming average. It just happens. Quietly. Consistently. Privately. You stop thinking long-term. You stop asking big questions. You stop chasing bold visions. And instead, you shrink. Your goals shrink. Your energy shrinks. Your identity shrinks. Until one day you realize you're not stuck. You're just small. Not by nature, but by habit. Because you practiced being mediocre. Repeatedly. Religiously. Like a ritual. And rituals are powerful, even the destructive ones. So I stayed distracted. And distraction became my drug. It numbed me. But it also robbed me. It stole presence. It stole progress. It stole peace. And the trade-off? A few fleeting moments of escape. A few likes. A few laughs. Nothing lasting. Nothing real. And the worst thing? I knew it was happening. I just didn't care enough to stop it. Not because I couldn't, but because stopping would mean facing the damage. Owning the wreckage. And that felt worse than staying numb. So I stayed numb. But numb doesn't mean safe. It just means disconnected. Disconnected from growth. From people. From yourself. That's what these 5 habits really did. They didn't just ruin my life. They severed my connection to it. They turned me into a spectator, watching from the sidelines, as the real version of me faded. Not with a bang, but with silence. And I let it happen. But even in that numbness, there was something I couldn't fully kill. Attention. A quiet discomfort. Not the loud kind that screams at you, but the kind that hums just beneath the surface. When you know this version of your life is a poor copy of what it could be. It showed up in strange ways. In the silence between songs. In the guilt after laughter. In the pit in my stomach after a long day of doing nothing meaningful. It wasn't depression. It wasn't laziness. It was dissonance. The friction between who I was becoming and who I was meant to be. That friction, it's a gift. But I treated it like a curse. I tried to silence it with noise. Bury it with comfort. Ignore it with distraction. But it never left. It waited. Patiently. Because that's what truth does. And then one morning, after too little sleep and too much self-loathing, I caught my reflection. Not in the mirror. In my own behavior. I watched myself ignore another alarm. Reach for the phone. Scroll out of obligation. Open a message, then close it. Lie in bed with no plan, no urgency, no spark. And it hit me. Not as a motivational moment. Not as an epiphany. Just exhaustion. Not the kind that sleep fixes. The kind that comes from living too far below your potential. For too long. That's when I realized. This isn't burnout. This isn't fate. This is self-abandonment. And if I can abandon myself this thoroughly, maybe I can also reclaim myself. Slowly. Quietly. Deliberately. Because I wasn't waiting for a hero anymore. I was done romanticizing rock bottom. Done glamorizing failure like it made me deep. Pain doesn't make you wise. Reflection does. Discipline does. Action does. So I asked one question. Not, how do I fix everything? That question is a trap. It overwhelms. It paralyzes. Instead, I asked, what is one thing I'm avoiding today? And the answer came instantly. Move your body. Breathe on purpose. Write something real. Apologize. Clean the space. Say no. Say yes. Say enough. It wasn't complicated. It was just inconvenient. And I had trained myself to fear inconvenience. But that moment, that one question, broke the cycle. Not because it fixed everything, but because it reminded me I wasn't powerless. That feeling of ruin? That wasn't the end. It was the invitation. Because what ruins you also reveals you. Reveals the parts you abandoned. The principles you betrayed. The truths you traded for temporary numbness. And the deeper the fall, the clearer the contrast. When you finally rise. Not because of a single moment, but because of repeated, microscopic defiance. Against who you've been pretending to be. That's where it starts. Not with motivation. Not with a morning routine. With refusal. With honesty. With the smallest act of rebellion against your lesser self. And in that rebellion, you remember something. You weren't always this lost. You weren't always this passive. You used to fight for yourself. And maybe you can again. I used to think strength looked loud, bold, heroic, like a movie scene. But now I know. Real strength is subtle. It's saying no when your whole body craves the easy yes. It's getting out of bed when your excuses feel bigger than your purpose. It's keeping your word especially when no one's watching. It's choosing discipline over drama. And at some point, that day, maybe the next, I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I sat in silence. No music. No screens. No distractions. Just me. And the wreckage I created. It was uncomfortable. Almost unbearable. But here's the thing about silence. It doesn't just expose your pain. It introduces you to your power. Because buried underneath all the noise, underneath all the regret and self-pity, there was still something intact. A will. A spark. A sliver of self-respect that refused to die. It wasn't loud. It didn't beg. It just waited for me to stop lying. So I stopped. Stopped pretending I didn't care. Stopped blaming everyone else. Stopped narrating my life like a victim. And in that stillness I asked, what would it look like if I stopped running? Not just physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. What would it look like to sit in the discomfort and not numb it? To feel the cravings for escape and not obey them? To want to scroll, lash out, complain, and instead choose stillness? That's when I started to understand something the Stoics knew all along. Freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It's being able to say no to what destroys you. And I had never felt so imprisoned as when I thought I was free to indulge every impulse. Turns out, self-control isn't a cage. It's the key. And the things I once hated, routine, discipline, limits, sacrifice, those were the very things that built peace. Peace isn't found in chaos. It's built in structure, in silence, in self-mastery, not perfection, mastery, which means showing up, even when you don't want to, especially then. So I stood up. No fireworks, no motivation video, no new me speech. I just stood up, and for the first time in weeks, I made a decision that didn't betray me. That's how it starts. Not with inspiration, but with integrity. Not with a perfect plan, but with a better choice. Just one. Because the same way I spiraled down with 5 habits, I could spiral up with 5 truths, 5 anchors, 5 Stoic decisions I had been avoiding my whole life. And for the first time, I was ready to stop avoiding. Not because I was finally strong, but because I was finally tired of being weak. And that's all you need sometimes. Not a miracle. Just enough disgust with who you've been to finally become someone else. Someone honest. Someone intentional. Someone unshaken. I didn't suddenly become disciplined overnight. I didn't wake up with fire in my chest and a perfect morning routine. I woke up, and it still felt heavy. The resistance didn't disappear, but something had changed. I was finally willing to stop negotiating with my weakness. See, there's a part of you that will always try to pull you back. It sounds rational, sounds compassionate. Just rest. Just skip today. You've been through a lot. But what it's really saying is, let's stay small. Let's stay safe. And for a long time, I listened, because it was easier to believe I needed more time than to admit I'd already wasted too much of it. I realized I had mastered the art of making things look okay. Not be okay, just look okay. That's a skill in this world. You can wear exhaustion like confidence. You can dress insecurity as humor. You can post quotes about strength, while practicing weakness every single day. I was doing all of that, living behind filters, both online and in my own mind, filtering the truth, softening my failures, blaming circumstances instead of confronting character. But the real shift didn't come from guilt. It came from ownership. When I finally said, out loud, even just to myself, this is me, and this is mine. This mess, this apathy, this anger, this fear, all of it, mine. And if it's mine, then so is the power to change it. That realization didn't feel good. It felt heavy. Responsibility always does. But for the first time, I wasn't trying to drop the weight. I was ready to carry it. Because avoidance? That's a weight too. You don't escape it. You just carry it in the form of regret. In the form of wasted potential. In the form of quiet nights where your mind won't shut up. That's the tax of ignoring your own growth. And I'd been paying it for too long. So I stopped looking for hacks. Stopped asking how to feel more motivated. I started asking how to feel more honest. Because the truth is, motivation can't be trusted. But truth? Truth holds you up even when nothing else does. And the truth was this. If I didn't change, nothing would. No one was coming to rewrite my story. No savior. No secret technique. No future version of me was going to magically appear and drag me out of bed. It had to be me. The same version. The same tired, unsure, doubtful version. Had to become the one that moved. That's when it began. Not a transformation. A decision. One small defiance against who I'd been. One honest act. One quiet win. That's how you start to rebuild a life. Not with hype. Not with a 5 a.m. club. But with the smallest refusal to keep being who you're tired of being. You don't have to be fearless. Just fed up. Fed up enough to stop lying. Stop waiting. Stop scrolling for answers you already know. Because you do know. You always did. You were just hoping you could escape the work. But you can't. And here's the twist. That's not a punishment. It's the path. The work is the way out. The discipline is the rescue. The silence you keep avoiding, that's where the blueprint lives. And when you finally go there, when you stop running and actually listen, you'll hear them. The habits. The real ones. The ones that don't ruin you. The ones that sharpen you. The ones that look boring on the surface, but become the spine of a life worth waking up for. And if you're ready, really ready, we can talk about them.